Please welcome Slade O'Brien.
Thank you. Before I get started, I do want to introduce Scott Spages and Kathy Salerno. If you'll stand up. Scott, you want to come up? Oh, you both come up. I'm gonna have Scott talk to you a little bit about our field program. We've hired 15 field staff in the state of Florida this year to work on getting a message out, and I'll let you tell a little bit about it.
Thank you. Yes, we're throughout Florida. There's 15 of us, as Slade said. Kathy covers Palm Beach County. I cover Broward County. You should know nationally we're 1.9 million strong. We have over 600,000 on Facebook. Our Florida Facebook 2 days ago went over 10,800. I know in Broward County alone we have 4,400 identified AFP supporters, and so we're a very strong organization. The goal for us for this year is we run offices. We have a sheet, if you wanted to know where they were, between Miami and Palm Beach, the Gold Coast. We have 5 offices where we'll be running phone banks on a regular basis. Kathy's had a lot of success already in Palm Beach Gardens. I know some of you here, the Tea Party, have been in there manning those offices. The goal is to do like voter identification. Wow, what loyalty. What unbelievable loyalty. We do voter identification. We have what's called a predictive dialing system. So the old days of sitting there and dialing numbers is over. You call into an 800 number, and if there's 10 people at an office making calls, the system may be making 100 phone calls at a time to get 10 live people on the phone for you. So it saves a lot of time. We're doing simple surveys now, voter identification. It helps us. We're an advocacy and an education organization. Part of our mantra, our goal, is that we want to change the dynamic. Instead of constantly chasing these candidates and these elected officials in the elections, we want to be moving the culture to a new mindset to drive the issues. We want the voters to drive the issues. So we are doing voter identification on key questions. So if you came to one of our phone banks, you would be asking, once you got a live person on the phone, 3 survey questions. And that allows us to keep a very strong database, and then allows us to go back later on down the road and either mail them the right types of mailers based on how they've responded, or to recall them and give them the proper messaging so that they have a good understanding of what the issues are of the day, and then it makes it easier for us when it comes time to make decisions about who our elected officials should be. So I can tell you, phone banks I think probably sound a little boring to you, but we're doing a little bit some unique stuff. We pizza parties, ice cream socials. We show videos. So you come and make some calls. You see an educational video. We have a great video called "I Want Your Money," which we're going to be showing, and a few others. We try to keep it fun. If you're associated with a group, a club, you lead some group, or if you know of any groups, we go and speak to those organizations. Kiwanis, Rotary, JC's, Republican, Democrat, we'd be happy to speak to any of those different organizations. So plug us in, and if any of those groups want to come and make phone calls, again, we can make it a fun night for them, a win-win situation where your organization can draw some new members in and have a fun evening together. Any group wants to accomplish things together. So, plug us in where you can. Bowling leagues, Bible studies, kennel clubs, whatever your club is, we'll get you involved. I don't know if there's any questions I can answer, or if Kathy wanted to add anything, but from now for the rest of the year, you can expect us to be out there, sending you emails, calling you and asking you to come over to our phone banks. But don't think of it just as a phone bank. We like to call them the Freedom Phones or the Freedom Centers, and we're going to have a lot of fun there, a lot of information, a great opportunity to meet new people and network, and again, have some fun. Questions? Thank you.
Hey, Scott, both of these are on that back table. Would you pass them out? Sure. Great. Most of today has been focused on accountability, transparency, good government, honesty in politicians. I mean, I've heard this has been a reoccurring theme throughout the day. Going after Jerry is actually a perfect position for me to talk about what I want to talk about. He talked about being able to do things locally to make a difference, and he clearly has done that. I have a plan, we have a plan at AFP that's not local, it's statewide. And I believe if you will adopt this program and get involved with this program, we can make serious strides towards having a government that's more accountable, more transparent, take some of the cronyism out of government, and really turn this state around. You know, as I travel around the state and talk to different groups, one of the things that comes up to me all the time is, how do I get my elected officials to listen to me? You know, how do I get them to listen to me about this issue or that issue? If you've waited till the legislative session to start, you have waited too long to have that conversation. Now is the time that you get elected officials to listen to you when they're candidates running for office, because now it's the time that they're trying to get support. Now it's the time that they're building their platform. Now it's the time that you can have an effect on them that's immediate, because their ears are open and they're not dealing just with the special interests that help get them elected. They're actually talking to you out in the field. Once that election takes place, those dynamics tend to change a little bit going forward. The other thing that I heard in going around the state is, again, people constantly are telling me, I want politicians that are going to be honest with me. They're going to, that will identify a problem and actually propose real solutions to those problems, not put a Band-Aid on it, not put a Band-Aid on something that needs surgery, and not use gimmickry around an issue, but really identify what the problem is truthfully and be honest with us about what those problems are. More accountability, more transparency. You know, in Florida, and just to clarify, AFP is a nonpartisan organization. We do not endorse candidates. We do not work on social issues. We do not work on foreign policy issues, okay? We believe basically in three things. Limited government is defined by the Constitution. We believe in, we believe in limited government, fiscal restraint, and we believe that free markets give the greatest path to prosperity for the most people. Everywhere free markets have been tried, it's worked. When you start chipping away at the free markets, prosperity drops. Simple as that. So, you know, we live in a state that has a Republican governor, that has a Republican cabinet, that has a Republican House, and has a Republican Senate. And no matter what happens this November, we're going to have a Republican governor, a Republican cabinet, a Republican House, and a Republican Senate, right? I mean, some of the faces will change, some of the names will change, but the dynamics will actually be the same. It is inexcusable in a state that you have one party basically controlling the entire process that you cannot pass a bold reform agenda. It's inexcusable. We need to do that in Florida. If you look at what's taken place in Wisconsin, you had a Republican governor, or Republican candidate, sorry, run for governor in a Democratic state on a bold reform agenda and win. He got attacked. They had recall after recall. They went up to the judges. They went up to the Senate. But at the end of the day, because he enacted that bold reform agenda, he was reelected by more votes than he was the first time, and by a greater margin. People are clamoring for government to get right, to get clean, to be more accountable, to end cronyism in our government. It's rampant, and both parties are guilty of it. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. So what we've done is we think we've put together a plan to at least get us started down that path. And it's our 5 for Florida plan, which has been passed out in front of you. The plan is really simple. Number 1, eliminate the corporate income tax in Florida. Today, when we try to attract businesses to this state, what we do is we go out and we give a corporate tax credit in order to try to compete with other states that are competing for these businesses. As a result of that, those businesses that come into the state hire a cadre of lobbyists to keep that tax credit in place and to get more special favors for them as they move forward, right? So then, when people are running for office, who controls the process? Most of the money comes from these cadre of lobbyists who bundle it all together, and it goes back to that first question, how do I get my elected officials to listen to me? Well, they're not going to listen to you because they're listening to those cadre of lobbyists who bundled all that money together to help get them elected once they're up there. So this is how we can fundamentally change the culture of cronyism in Tallahassee, is by eliminating these corporate tax credits. Take the corporate income tax rate to 0. Get government out of the business of picking winners and losers in the marketplace. Put a billboard on our state that says, we're open for business. We don't have a personal income tax. We don't have a corporate income tax. We'd like for you to come set up shop here. And we're not going to treat you any different than anybody else that's already here or anybody else that wants to come here. We're going to treat you all the same. Think about the mindset change that does. All right, so first question usually people ask is, well, how in the world can we afford that? Well, it's less than 2% of our budget. It's not where we get our money from. So if it's less than 2% of our budget, and I'll show you a little bit later how we can make up all that money without having to cut anything, okay? If it's only 2% of our budget, we ought to be able to do it. The second part of that, or the second question that comes back is, well, isn't that just giving a corporate tax cut, or isn't that just giving a tax break to rich corporations? Folks, corporations don't pay income tax. We pay income tax. It's all passed through to us in the form of higher cost for goods and services, right? So we're the ones that actually pay the tax. So by eliminating the corporate income tax in Florida, we're giving ourselves a tax break, a 5.5% tax break moving forward. Okay. Number 2 on this list, don't make financial promises we can't keep. Florida has the 4th largest public pension program in the country. It's one of the best run, but it's still not where it needs to be. 88% funded based on a 7.5% return. 7.5% return. Anybody getting a 7.5% return today? No. So the state is already having to make up $5 billion. It's going to jump to $11 billion because we're not getting the 7.5% return. You know, Einstein said that the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and hoping for a different result. We need to stop being insane. Okay? We need to stop signing people up for pension programs that we know we can't pay. Moving forward. It doesn't make any sense. So unlike what's happened in other parts of the country, our plan, rather than attack the current contracts, is to say, look, we made a deal with you people. It was a stupid deal, but we made the deal. We have to honor our deal. But what we don't have to do is put any more people in the deal. We don't need to add, wood on a burning fire that's already out of control. We don't need to throw gas on it. So our stance is really simple. From this day forward, or from whatever day we can get the legislation passed forward, all future public employees will be offered a 401k style retirement plan. No more defined benefit programs. We go to defined contribution programs. This does a couple of things. 1, it doesn't keep perpetuating something we know we can't afford to pay. 2, how many people today stay in a job for 20 or 30 years? I mean, think about it. I mean, in today's marketplace, you jump from business to business to career to industry to industry. What happens in government today, because of this great big carrot that's sitting at the end of it, this public pension program, is employees that will go to work for government and then find out 5, 6, 7, 8 years into the process that they'd be maybe happier doing something different. They might be better at something different, but they haven't done anything to save for their retirement in the meantime, are now trapped in a government job. They've got to stay there in order to get the big carrot at the end. How many people have been down to City Hall and felt like, the people on the other side of the desk aren't real happy to be, I mean, there's a lot of angry people that work for government, very dissatisfied people. Well, imagine if you could go to work for government and then leave and then come back. You could be a teacher, leave, come back. You could go work at, in the planning department, leave, come back. You can do whatever you want, and that retirement follows you as you move forward, just like it would anybody in the private sector. It's a fundamental game changer moving forward. All right, I talked about the cronyism on the right with these corporate tax cuts. Well, the cronyism on the left is tied into these pension programs. Look at people that run for school board, city council, city clerk, county commission. Who are the big influencers in those elections? Anyone? Unions, right? The unions have a disproportionate effect on those local elections. Why? Because of their benefit programs. That's who writes the contracts for them. If you start to eliminate those contracts by taking people and putting them in defined contribution plan instead of a defined benefit plan, there's less interest in them having that person on the dais who's going to, what? Take care of their contract. I mean, this is Boca Raton. I live in this town. You don't run for office in Boca Raton without going and talking to the head of the fire chief, or to the head of the fire chief union. It's the first person you talk to. Why? Because they go door to door, they make all the signs, and they put all the signs out. So what do you think happens when contract time comes? This city bends over backwards for them, over and over and over again. It's ridiculous. We can change the entire system just by being smart and being fiscally prudent moving forward. Don't put any more people in a defined benefit program. Okay? Number 3, be stewards of good, transparent government. 60%, this goes back to what Jerry was saying, 60% of our government is done in the form of contracts with agencies, through agencies, okay, to outside services. 60%, think about how big that is. We don't have any standard accountabilities in those contracts. None to speak of. I'll give you 2 examples. These came directly from CFO Jeff Atwater. There is a woman in Miami-Dade County who gets $1 million a year, okay, to help prepare high school kids for college. Well, that sounds great. That sounds noble. What do you think she does for the money? You don't know, right? Guess what? Either does the state. It's not defined in the contract. She could be doing a fabulous job. This might be something we want to put more money into. Who knows? She may be buying them a tie, patting them on the butt, and kicking them out the door. We don't know the answer. It's crazy that we don't know the answer. Yet we renew the contract every year. All right? Second example is a prison. This particular food service contract with a prison. This particular prison this particular company is paid to make so many meals a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. All right, well, that makes sense, right? Right, seems good. The problem is that particular prison's only 60% full. They're getting paid for 100% of the meals, whether they're cooked or not, because of the way the contract's written. You can save 40% just by having a review process of that contract to make sure that the taxpayers are actually getting value for what they're paying for. So what the CFO would like to see happen, and what we would like to see happen, is 2 things. 1, every contract in the state be posted online so that citizens like yourself can review it without having to do a public record request. And 2, that we have a set of standards, deliverables, accountability, a review process for every single contract. So that way, if you in the public or anybody else who's digging through these contracts can identify some waste or identify a better way to do something, that can be brought to the attention of the Chief Financial Officer's office, and maybe we can do something about it. Their assessment of this, when they looked at it, they think they can save the state of Florida $13 billion a year by implementing this going forward, okay? The state sales tax that I want to eliminate is a little over $2 billion. We can pay for it right there. And the pension shortfall that we have, we just made up for that too, okay? So the top 3 things on this list can totally be paid for just by being transparent and having some accountability standards in the contracts we have moving forward. Now, the CFO tried to get this passed last year. The Senate took it up, and as most of you know that are political, Jeff Atwater is our CFO, and he came from the Florida Senate, so he still had some friends in the Florida Senate. The Senate took it up. The House would refuse to take it up. Now, why do you think the House, a Republican House, refused to take up a bill that would add transparency and accountability to government? All those lobbyists that make all the money off of these contracts, exactly. I mean, the bottom line is this. You know, when we think of lobbyists, we kind of think of, oh, making legislation. But there's a whole lot more to what those folks do than just make legislation. They steer contracts. They steer contracts all over the place. So in order for us to be more in charge of our elected officials and for them to listen to us more, we need to clean up the system. And this is a way of cleaning up the system. Number 4, if you talk to, yeah, go right ahead. Absolutely, absolutely. Number four, if you talk to CEOs, job innovators, job creators that are looking to move a business or create a business in a state, one thing they talk about is taxes. Another thing they talk about, is education. In Florida, we've come a long way in trying to introduce choice into education. The Supreme Court of Florida threw a big monkey wrench at it, but we've got a long way to go. Again, CEOs, when they're thinking about moving people to a new place, they want to know that there's the quality workforce there that can do the job. And then also, and just as important, if they're moving people to that state, they want to know that their employees' kids can get a quality education. I believe that competition does a couple things. It improves the quality of the service or product, and it drives down the price. We need to have more competition in our educational system in the state of Florida. So what we want to see is the step-up program expanded. We'd like to see, there's two funding mechanisms when it comes to public schools. One of them is dollars to the classroom, and the other is dollars for fiscal things, sticks and bricks, right? We want to see the dollars in the classroom angle. We want to see charter schools funded on a parity level with the traditional public schools so that we can see who really is doing a better job. Right now, the charter school is at a disadvantage. Now, we're not asking for more money. We're just asking for it to be distributed more evenly. Because then what's going to happen is the schools that are successful, the schools that the kids are learning the best, people are going to emulate success. The ones that aren't working, people are going to walk away from the failures, no question about it. But having that competition will make it better. The third part of that plank is the enactment of parent trigger legislation. If your kid is in a failing school, we ought to be able to have the parents play a role in turning that school around. And that bill came up this particular year, and unfortunately it didn't get heard on the last day of session because of some horse trading that was going on something else, and somebody didn't get their way and it wasn't voted on. But we'd like to see that come back next year, and we'd like to see that passed. Again, the more we can get parents involved in the process of education, the better we're going to be at the end as far as our educational system is concerned. The fifth part of this plank is free entrepreneurs to pursue the American dream. There's two different issues here. One, how many people have tried to get an occupational license, a building permit, something like that with the city, the county? Anybody? Frustrating, to say the least? Well, it doesn't matter if you're, okay, 14 months. You're going to love what I'm going to tell you then. It doesn't matter if you're the CEO of a company or you want to open up a barbershop. There's certain hoops that you have to jump through. I mean, that's just the way it is, okay? But every day you lose is a day you're losing money on your potential investment, that it's being drug out. Well, we have a novel idea, and that is to require all government agencies and governments who are involved in the permitting process or in the licensing process to have to post on a state-based website how long it takes to get it done. Simple, right? So if this road out here is the county line, and in Palm Beach County it takes 6 months to get a building permit, but in Broward County it takes 6 weeks, all things being equal, where do you think I'm going to open up my business? Broward County, right? If it takes six days to get a building or an occupational license in Palm Beach County, but it takes 6 weeks in Broward, all things being equal, I'm going to get my occupational license here. If you get these organizations, these governments, these entities competing against each other, the ones that are not doing well, they're going to find that they're not attracting very much new business, and the ones that are being efficient are going to have more people coming to them. I spent 4 years of my life helping people get stuff approved. That's ridiculous. I mean, it's ridiculous that somebody can earn a living doing it. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a land use planner. It's relationship driven. That's crazy. We ought to be able, as a business person, you ought to be able to say, I want to do this, and have a reasonable expectation as to how long it's going to take to get to yes or no. No's an answer, but yes or no, so that you can plan accordingly to open up that business. The second part of this plank is that, according to the Justice Institute, Florida has the 4th most burdensome barriers to entry in the marketplace in the country. You know, we often think of ourselves as a business-friendly state. We are not a business-friendly state. Well, we just simply aren't. So what we want to see is this. We want to see a review process of all the licensing and regulation in the state that relates to non-safety related occupations. Okay, I mean, we don't want to change regulations for paramedics and nurses and things like this, but non-safety related occupations. Because let's go back to the first thing with the cronyism and the lobbyists. What we've done in this state is we've allowed trade associations and big lobbying firms to represent a few people in an industry and to put up a whole bunch of barriers so that there won't be any more people in that industry. We live in a state where our unemployment rate is higher than the national average. We have the second highest foreclosure rate in the country. It is crazy that we're keeping people out of the business world, that we're making it difficult for somebody who wants to go into business for themselves. We ought to be making it easy. You know, if you look at our economy, historically, agriculture, tourism, sticks and bricks, right? I mean, that's pretty much what we are. We don't have a whole lot of manufacturing jobs in Florida. We have a whole bunch of people that have spent a lot of time in the service industry, different service industries, and are very skilled. Well, why can't they go into business for themselves if they want to? Mainly because there's too many rules and regulations preventing them from doing so. If we make it easier for them, we can get them off the welfare rolls and get them back on the tax rolls moving forward. So that's the basis of this 5-point plan. So now the trick is, how do we get it moving, right? How do we get people to pay attention to it? Here's what we did, and we need your help. We mailed every single candidate for state office in Florida this plan. And we sent them a 12-question questionnaire with it as well. We asked them to answer the questions of the questionnaire, and we posted their answers online on the www.5forflorida.com website. So you'll be able to compare the candidates' answers to these particular issues. We also asked them to endorse the plan, to run on it, make it part of their platform. Okay? We've had a pretty good response, not as much response as I'd like to have, but we've got about 60 candidates out there that have endorsed the plan so far. What I would ask you to do is to endorse the plan. What I would then ask you to do is go on the website, because on the website you can put in what district you live in, and you can email the candidates that are running for office in your district and tell them you would like them to run on the plan. And if you're part of an organization, whether it's a Tea Party group or whatever, ask your organization to endorse the plan. It's by getting critical mass and critical numbers that we can make this work. Now, so that you don't think that's pie in the sky, I'm going to give you a real-life example of how it has worked. Okay? In 1998, the Florida House and the Florida Senate passed a very comprehensive tort reform bill. It was literally years in the work to get this bill passed. And it was sent up to Governor Lawton Childs, who promptly vetoed it. So nobody had the stomach to do this again. Because, I mean, you want to talk about sausage making, this was sausage making. So all this work for nothing. So, but Lawton Childs was term limited. So there was a campaign that fall for governor. Jeb Bush was running for governor at the time. And when Childs vetoed the bill, he said that, you know, if I was governor, I would have signed that bill. But that was all he said. You know, it's just sort of an off-the-hand comment. So when Jeb started campaigning for governor, and he wasn't talking about tort reform, we decided to follow him everywhere he went. And I mean everywhere he went. Any public meeting, any public rally, any hobnob, anything that Jeb went to, we went to. And we had T-shirts made up that said, trial lawyers, they don't make the products you buy, they just make them more expensive. And we gave them out like cotton candy, you know, at the fair. And so what would happen is Jeb would come speak to a group of people, and there'd be 10 or 15 people in the back with these T-shirts that all look alike, and, you know, what's that? And then he'd finish his comments, and every one of those people would raise their hand. What would you do on the tort reform bill? All right, so this went on for a week or two. Then it got to the point that Jeb knew they were going to be there, so before he even called on them, he'd tell people who they were. Then it got to the point that in his first 3 statements, he would say, and oh, by the way, if that tort reform bill comes back, I will sign that bill into law. Okay, so in a 6-week period, simply by eating a lot of fast food and following Jeb all around, it became one of the top 3 issues that he was talking about on the campaign trail. But then we had the problem of the House and the Senate, right? We couldn't follow all of those guys around. So what we did is exactly what we did with this. We sent every single person running for office in the state of Florida, for state office, a copy of the Tort Reform Bill along with the pledge. And we asked them if they would pledge to pass the same exact bill if they were elected into office next session. Some people answered yes, some people answered no, some people didn't answer at all. Fair enough. We ended up with 16 House races where we had one candidate that had endorsed the pledge and one who hadn't, and 4 Senate races where we had a candidate who had endorsed the pledge and a candidate who hadn't. In those 16 House races and those 4 Senate races, we organized. We did phone banks, we did door-to-door, we did radio, we did television in the Senate races. In the 16 House races, the person who signed the Tort Reform Pledge won 15 of them. In the Senate, the pro-tort reformers won 3 of the 4 Senate races. Okay? So what I was able to do is to take a stack of pledges that equaled a majority in both the House and the Senate and walk it into the Speaker of the House's office and the Senate President's office and say, your bill is passed. You have the commitments right there in writing. Done. We made it happen. So you can make it happen. We can do this, okay? So please endorse this plan if you like what's in it. This is a plan that should appeal to everyone. I mean, it really should. Democrats, independents, Republicans, libertarians. There's really, I mean, this is all good common sense stuff. Even the unions who are not happy with this, we're not changing their existing contracts. We're simply saying we're not going to put anybody else in that contract moving forward. So it's a pretty hollow argument if they come back and say, wait, you're changing the deal on us. No, we're not. We're just not going to keep making the same deal moving forward. So again, I hope you all endorse the plan. I hope you go online and ask your elected officials to endorse the plan. I hope you talk to your candidates about it. And I hope you take it back to your groups and ask your groups to endorse the plan as well. And with that, do you want me to do Q&A or no? Mary Ellen, do you want me to do Q&A, or are we on a, we have time? I mean, I know it's been a long day. Yes?
Yeah, 1 or 2. Yeah, I really do like the idea, except you missed one key element on here, which is transportation.
Mm-hmm.
So let me know when you want to have I've been working on what I call the Florida Freeway Act. If you want to reform transportation, cut the cost of transportation, I can tell you how you can do it.
Okay. Well, get my card and we'll talk later. Thanks. Yes, sir.
You know how Florida business fees compare to other states, like concessions are kind of high. The business fees and all kinds of things.
I don't have an accurate accounting on where we stand, you know, with all 50 states. We do have an enormous amount of fees in the state. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. Exactly. Anybody else? All right. Thanks so much for your time.